Today we're going to look at the TiOC 2 turret 5 megapixel camera. Now let's just in fact actually look at the design of the actual camera. So straight off the back we have our regular fly lead here, and connections wise we have the 12 volt DC jack, RJ45 connection with the actual pre-made cut for the waterproof connection. We also have alarm input and output, so of course we also have that 12 volt electrical 1 amp electrical tolerant relay in the actual camera as well as, and we also all have audio in and out. Okay, whenever it comes to the actual camera itself, so first of all up in here we have the speaker for the actual TiOC 2 camera, and on the front we will notice that we have the dual illuminators. Now of course these ones here are quite different to our previous model, so let me explain. So of course on the your left side I guess we would actually have the red and blue illuminator, but on the right side we actually have the IR and white light illuminator. So within this component here we also have infrared, but then of course within a second's modification we can change it to a full color illumination, and this will emit a warm light glow. On this TiOC camera, this is the 5 megapixel version, and of course on 5 megapixels on this TiOC 2 camera the aperture has been set to f1.0, so then that means in extremely low light illumination the camera can see extremely well. This camera compared to TiOC 1, you will actually see that we actually have a dual microphone array. Okay, for TiOC 2 we have the bullet and the turret formation, and we have 5 megapixels and 8 megapixels. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my laptop there. This camera is uninitialized, so it's almost as good as factory defaulted, and we're going to set up this camera all the way from a uninitialized state to a working device. Right. Okay, right now I'm going to set up my TiOC 2 5 megapixel turret camera. Now of course the camera is already factory defaulted, so of course we're going to be doing everything as if it was a brand new camera straight out of the box. One thing to know is that TiOC cameras VMD already has the light and siren activated on default. So of course if this camera starts screaming, that just means that it might have seen something. We will see. Okay, right, okay, now let's set up the actual configuration. So what I'm going to do here, this is the Dahua toolbox. The Dahua toolbox is freely available from the DahuaSecurity.com website, and of course one of the modules within Dahua toolbox is of course obviously config tool. So if we click on config tool here and wait for this to load, here she comes. Okay, and as you will see we have a uninitialized 3549 ASPVS3 for TiOC 2. Okay, now I need to initialize the device before I can configure it, so let's say right, I'm going to initialize this and initialize, and I'm going to just give the password admin123. admin123. I'm going to turn the email section off because I'm quite sure I can remember that. Okay, the device has now been activated. I'm going to put admin123 into my settings box of config tool, which will then allow me to modify the IP address of this camera. So I want it to be 192.168.0.100, which matches my laptop range. 255.255.255.0 192.168.0.1. Okay, and you might be able to see just slightly there's that green tick, which would indicate that the actual camera's been modified successfully. Okay then, now clicking on the web far right hand side here, this will load Internet Explorer. Okay, and this is the TiOC 2 interface. Okay, right, there we go there. Now I think, so I said before that it's the video motion detection that is on default, which might make it scream and, you know, do the flashing light, but I have a sense with TiOC 2 it actually might be smart motion detection that is on default. So I'm wondering if this actually sees me, then this might just start screaming at me. We'll see in a few moments. Okay, right. So I'm going to start off with settings, and whenever you click on settings, then of course it immediately goes into conditions. Now straight away on conditions alone, then of course it brings up one element that is new to TiOC 2, which is the Illuminator. Now in previous models, I'm quite nervous of that screaming right in my ear there. Now in previous models, then of course with the actual Illuminator we can control the amount of strength given to the actual white light. But since this is TiOC 2, now we actually have smart illumination, okay? Now whenever we actually use the smart illumination, then of course if somebody comes into the field of view, then of course the actual camera will go from an infrared mode into a full white light mode, and then of course as of which we can then in fact actually light the scene and then of course see the target within the field of view, the objective within the field of view, for example. Now what I'll do is I'll just show you a couple of things. So if I go into IR mode on daytime here, change it from day and night to black and white. I don't know if the camera would ever be able to see anything like that. However, though, at this current time, the actual infrared light is on, because you can see from my recording here, then of course everything is grey and monochrome image, okay? If I go back into my Illuminator and turn my white light on, change it back to a full color image, change it to manual, okay? So there you can actually see the actual powers of the Illuminator is quite strong. You know, it is actually quite a powerful light. There we go. See? Told you that might happen. This camera also supports single button disarming. Where were we? Right, back to the actual camera's Illuminator. Okay, it's not going to do anything now. Okay, so as you can see, we actually have the actual white light Illuminator, and that's set on manual. We can also dim that down to maybe 1%. And then of course we can also go all the way up to 100%. Now let's not forget that of course in the actual turret cameras, and the bullet cameras actually for that matter, all TiOC 2 cameras, then of course it's got a full color sensor. So because of like neighboring nearbys or like people nearby, then of course in the past I have actually just used a 5% illumination, which is this. And 5% illumination in my back garden has been able to create a full color field of view, even at 5% illumination. Because let's not forget that with an aperture of f1.0, 5 megapixels, ultra low light lens, and of course an illuminated factor of 5%, then of course it's enough, you know, and that was good enough to be able to see everything in my back garden. But what I'll do is I'll keep it on the smart illumination. Okay, so of course that won't do anything now because it's daytime now. It does have a photo cell, well, image photo cell. So of course if it's bright enough in here, there's no need to kick in the infrared. Okay, right. I suppose let's move over to video. And of course you've got another big shout out, my goodness, right, H.265 and AI codec. Right, okay, now that probably needs explanation. Now, H.265, as you already know, it has a 50% saving from H.264, okay? So, of course, it saves on 50% on bandwidth and 50% on storage. That's the powers of H.265. But then, of course, we also have AI coding. Now, of course, AI coding part and part works within the smart motion detection as well as, and of course what it will do is it will adjust the actual bandwidth in the actual camera to suit the field of view in the event that there's actually a person or a vehicle within it. So of course the actual camera will record harder, better, faster, with more detail and more clarity only if a human is present or a vehicle is present. Thus, in fact, actually giving us longer storage capacities in the event that any one of those two things weren't in the field of view. So, of course, you know, in that case there, we can actually start making these cameras considerably precede their expected recording times than standard encoding strategies. So, like if I go back to general recording and it's set at 3 megabits per second, it will just do 3 megabits per second. Outright, that's just flat. However, though, if I keep it on the AI coding, there's a possible chance that it will, in fact, actually take into the field of view human and vehicle, and then of course adjust that view to in fact actually make more sense and record for longer. Okay, I will keep it on the actual AI coding because it is a valuable feature. Right, next over to audio. So of course straight off the back, when we're on to the actual audio, we can enable these. So one thing to note is that on these cameras, then of course mic is the default selection for the actual audio. Be wary of that because I think in previous models, line in was in fact actually the previous selection. So mic is now selected default, and of course microphone volume is at maximum, speaker volume is at maximum. Now that will allow you to do a audio challenge at this time, but have you noticed that on the mainstream recording side of things, that of course it was not enabled. So just because you can talk to it, just because that you can hear it without that checkbox ticked, doesn't mean that you're actually recording it. Okay, so there's one thing to know. So mainstream, I do want the actual recording on, and of course I do want it to go to a portable device if I wished for it. Save. Okay. On the actual alarm audio as well, we still have these 10 pre-configured voices, and if I bring this one over a tad bit closer to me, just so we can hear better.
You are under surveillance.
Okay. No parking here. This is the one I use at my house.
No parking here.
Yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. Right, okay, then danger zone, keep away.
Danger zone, keep away.
Okay, not too bad, it's all good. Vehicle lane only, no pedestrians.
Vehicle lane only, no pedestrians.
I think actually that might be a new one. Right, and don't forget at the bottom there, add audio file. So of course, whenever you add an audio file, you can take any third-party file, you can upload it to your actual TiOC camera, and then of course you can have that play in the event of the actual audio as well as, okay? Okay, networking, let's see if there's anything new to networking. No, I don't think so. So of course, if you go into TCP IP, you will be able to modify the IP address of your devices. You've got down the left-hand side here, you've got SNMP, so Simple Network Mail Protocol, and you also have Access Platform. So of course, you can actually do P2P directly to the actual TiOC camera. Lots of people still use like ports on MVRs, you know, but like I do some things slightly differently for me because I P2P everything, all of my cameras and my recorders, so then that way I can gain remote access into all of my devices, and then of course I don't need to go to a site just to do a simple camera modification because I can do everything remotely. Even the camera supports Access Platform. Okay, let's go off to the events. So video detection, let's just take a look. So yeah, there we go. That video detection had the audio linkage and the warning light on by default. Let's see what smart motion detection had. There we go. Smart motion detection confirmed on by default. That's why it started screaming at me whenever it saw enough of me within the field of view. Okay, now that the actual camera is currently disarmed, it's not going to do anything. Okay. So let's go back. So video motion detection. So as you can see, we of course obviously have our record, relay out. We've got our audio linkage. So that was play 3 times. So actually I'm going to have a play with that. I'm going to put that on to 1 now. And I'm going to say valuables do not touch. And I'm going to put the warning light and I'm going to change the frequency up to high. And I'm going to keep that on for 10 seconds. Right. Save that one. When you go over to motion detection, then of course you'd always notice that when you go over to smart motion detection, then of course in this case here, it only has the filters, which is human and motor vehicle. So let's not forget how this actually works. VMD, video motion detection, whenever it sees movement within the field of view, then it reports the VMD event to SMD, smart motion detection. Smart motion detection then filters it out between a human and a vehicle, and if VMD and SMD are in agreement, then the camera will do the rules of VMD, like the light, the siren, the relay, the email, the push notification. Okay, that's the actual process. VMD to SMD, joint effort creates the event. Okay, that's how all of that works. Okay, that's why there's no settings here under SMD. It's just human and vehicle on or off. So other features of the actual TiOC camera is also audio detection as well. When you click on the insensitivity change, this is quite actually a handy feature. Click on save there. Now, can you actually see like this chart going by? Because the actual camera is very close to me. I'll move it back a bit. But if I was to stop talking for a moment, let's just see the actual chart. So you can see all of that red. So let's bring it down a bit. Testing 1, 2, 3. Still quite loud. Testing. One. Oh, right. So this is a very sensitive microphone. So let's see how quiet I need to be. Testing. Oh, so sensitive. The TiOC 2 camera is so sensitive. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to increase my threshold, meaning, right, okay, so anything louder than that, the alarm will trigger. Test.
Valuables. Don't touch.
Right, okay. And that saw me at the same time, because smart motion detection is on. Oh. Okay, now, smart plan. Okay, so the forgotten feature. So many people have, of course, obviously gone into their camera, gone onto IVS, face detection, people counting, heat mapping, and of course, obviously done the actual rules and forgot to turn on the smart plan. Smart plan is your resource for the actual camera. All cameras come resource free. If this device had even more features, like a 7 series, for example, I would see 4 or 5 of them on here. I would have like metadata, face detection, people counting, heat mapping, AMPR on other cameras, for example. So of course, when you come into the actual smart plan, don't forget you need to turn your smart plan on, and then of course, don't forget to save. Then it allows you to go over to the actual IVS to create your tripwire or intrusion, so on and so forth. Okay, many people have forgotten this in the past. Is I want to turn smart motion detection off in this particular case, just for this example. Yeah, yeah, we know, you saw us. Right, okay, and then I'll do intrusion detection. One thing about IVS versus smart motion detection. On TiOC 1, TiOC 2, and active deterrent cameras, such as the 5 series, you can actually use the IVS and smart motion detection at exactly the same time. You can use smart motion detection to be able to determine the whole field of view, and then of course in your actual playback you can control the actual the cars that came into the field of view or the people that came into the field of view. But then you could also have IVS, like tripwire intrusion, on your actual boundary line and have completely different sets of triggers prior to somebody actually crossing the line and possibly coming to your entry point at the actual house. So of course I have smart motion detection on a camera 5 meters high. I study the whole field of view. I can go into the playback on my MVR-I. I can click on search, select the actual human, and the whole timeline will change to every time that a camera saw a human. But then I can go into the AI search, and then I can select IVS, and then I can also determine when people actually walked over that line. So of course you can use 2 AI features simultaneously with TiOC 1, TiOC 2, and active deterrent. Okay. Now on TiOC 2 though, we actually have a new feature where we actually have inside detection. So the appear, when you actually appear into the box, like if you come through a doorway, for example, cross line whenever you go through any one of the 4 lines, and then of course it'll go off. But now you've got inside detection. Now of course on the initial inside detection, take a look at this. We actually have duration as well. I can set it to be a 10-second duration, and I can control how many repeat alarms there are. But if a person was to come into the box and of course not move on, not be on their way, then of course if they were to exceed it by 10 seconds in this case, then the alarm will go off. Okay, so of course you can almost use it for maybe loitering or maybe strand detection. You know, whenever somebody comes in the field of view, they don't actually move, but they just stand there. We call that strand detection. So of course in this particular case here, TiOC 2 now supports inside detection. Okay, now So of course there's my actual intrusion detection area, and as you can see just below, target of filtering, which is now on by default, which already supports human and motor vehicle, and we also have the alarm linkage again. So we got audio linkage, and I'm not going to do that one because it's very, very loud. So, and then just warning light, and let's do the actual light frequency very, very low. Okay, right, now that camera is literally right in front of me, so of course the actual chances of me seeing me is probably slim to none, but we will try. Okay, so as you can see, that was the actual IVS alarm based on intrusion detection and a human being present. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to the actual IVS on that one. Okay, and then I will just turn that off for now, otherwise they keep on going off. Now, immediately below IVS is alarm, another new key feature to TiOC 2. So of course on the actual TiOC 2 side of things, when we enable the actual alarm, then of course we also have all of our standard triggers with like the audio and the light. But this time, when we click on the mode, we have arming and disarming. Okay, now I've got a small video about that. Directly below from IVS is alarm. Okay, now of course the alarm input can be triggered using the audio linkage and the warning lights, just like all of the other events. But this time, whenever it comes to that mode of alarm input, we can now select arming and disarming. Okay, so then that way, on your fly lead here, these connections specifically actually, then of course on your fly lead, then of course if the normally open, normally closed was to be shorted out, inverted so to speak, then of course it would disarm your camera. Okay, now I've actually got a small video on that I'll just show you quickly. And then of course what you do is that if there was any type of automated device, let's say that you've got home intrusion systems, Wi-Fi relays, then of course you can just say, right, okay, stop doing this or do this, and then of course the camera will respond based on the inversion of normally open, normally closed. Okay, that is a new feature unique to TiOC 2.0. Okay, right, let's see, is there anything else remaining? Excuse me. Storage is quite regular, system is very regular, and yes, everything is, of course, obviously all the same. So whenever I go back to the live view, then of course a couple of things that you can see is that top right hand corner, we have the ability to trigger the warning light and the siren immediately. So of course in this case here, our warning light, very bright. Off, and I think the actual audio one has been pre-configured to be the actual sound set by the one that we've selected, so I think it's going to be the alarm file. So let's see. That was very loud. Right, okay then, I think we can actually change that. So if we go into the settings, for example, go into camera, go into audio, and see the way that's got alarm.wav on. If we actually say vehicle lane, no pedestrians, select that. I'm going to just navigate away and come back to see if it's still there. It is still there. So now whenever I actually trigger this alarm also on my mobile phone, you know, DMSS, then let's see.
Vehicle lane only, no pedestrians. Vehicle
Cool.
lane only, no pedestrians.
That's pretty good. Right, okay, let's not forget on the actual TiOC 2 cameras, like TiOC 1, then of course they also support the two-way speech. So top right hand corner, we have a microphone. This feature is identical to a DMSS on the actual mobile app. So I'll just click it. We're going to definitely get some feedback for sure. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. So I'll show you just one more thing, because some people have wanted to control the illumination factors or maybe the actual infrared, and then of course, you know, they've wondered, you know, is it best to let the actual camera decide whenever it comes to a illuminated mode, or is it actually a better time to tell the camera? So for me, this is how I do it at my place. I actually use the profile management, and of course in this case here I use the actual schedule. So I know that this will obviously recur some repeat work on your side, because you know the time of light will change throughout the year. But like in this case here, I configure it so like around about 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock it's nighttime until then, and then of course it gets dark around about 9 o'clock in this day and age now. So of course, so I've got a nighttime profile and I've got a daytime profile. I'll click on the save button on there. I can go back to the conditions. So now we actually have day and night as per the profiles. So I'm going to say on daytime that I want smart illumination, but at nighttime, instead of smart illumination, whenever it comes on because of somebody in the field of view, then of course I'm actually going to want to keep it in IR mode. Okay, so whenever I press save on that, then of course now at night the sort of white light illuminators will not come on, but the infrared light will come on, and it will stay that way right up until 6:36 the following day. Right, I think that's about my side of it, guys. This is the new TiOC 2 camera. This is our new 5 megapixel version, and of course, so we've got some very new key elements, a new feature to IVS, a new feature to audio. So of course, previously to the TiOC 1.0, that had one microphone. I should bring the camera closer in a second. You will actually see this has 2 microphones to be able to have a better pickup. And then of course, as the actual turret cameras go, of course, obviously utilizing that full color sensor, it will be massively popular and successful. Okay, that's about my side of it. Don't forget to like, hit the bell and subscribe for even more great content. All the best.